Hey everybody, Scott Burnside back for another edition of the Suitcase and the Scribe. Mike McKenna in his closet, as per usual. I always love the lighting in that closet, man. That's a great thing. But here's the exciting thing. A week from today, my friend, I don't know where we're going to be, but we're going to be in the same city in Las Vegas, getting ready for All Star, and I'm pumped. I'm pumped to get out. It's gonna be fun, but I can't wait.
You're just going to be striding on in. I could see you wearing, shorts and a floral shirt, even if it's January, February, just to celebrate that I'm out, I'm free, let's go. But I get the feeling, Scott, that it's going to be one of the first reunions of a lot of people within media, within hockey circles.
Yeah,
maybe the closest thing we felt to what we had before. Even though I'm sure the players are I'm sure they're lukewarm to it, like, hey, we're going, but we're not going to really get to do a whole lot or as much as we expected, and kind of face these restrictions with Omicron that have changed things. But I don't know, man. I think once you get there, and especially as a player, they'll still buy in and enjoy it. And the on ice festivities are always the fun part. Everybody just wants to see who can skate the fastest or shoot the hardest. That's all we want to see. So I think it's definitely just as much fun for us now in media. And of course, Scott, there's always that side effect. This is where some real serious discussions tend to take place amongst hockey people once they're at these big convivial meetings, man. Like, this is where a lot of trades and movement are born from, or these in-person festivities. I think I'm really looking forward to it. We're gonna have to, Scott, we're gonna have to data mine some of our friends out there in Vegas, and I think we can probably find a good spot to have a bite to eat. Maybe. What do you think?
I might. I've already got a couple places. I've done some research, my friend. I've done some research, and my places might be a little bit different than the places you're doing research on.
We've got crossover. We'll be fine.
All right. Between now and next week, and I agree with you. I think there's a lot of be interesting to see the discussion there. But as always, lots going on. I don't know where to start with. I know that we've had reports. I'm sure Frank had the report, but Patrick Alvin now moving from Pittsburgh as an assistant GM to take over the GM job in Vancouver. That's been a busy time for Jim Rutherford, right? I mean, we earlier in the week, Emily Castengay, such a terrific story, the first female assistant GM in Vancouver Canucks history, and really one of the very first women at such a high profile. If you look at team hierarchy, this is yet another example of barriers being broken down. I'm going to monopolize this early part. I know Emily a little bit. Went to Montreal, did a story on her. Must be 3 years ago, and then connected with her because she was Alexis Lafreniere's agent, and spent some time with Emily and Alexi before his first training camp with the New York Rangers. And she's terrific, really smart, really on top of her game. And I love how she talks about how she understands that she walked into the first NHL players agents meeting, and she knew that everyone in there, they were all men, of course, mostly white men, figured she was someone's assistant or secretary. And she's like, I don't care. I'm here to do my job. And just love how she's approached it. And I think she's going to be a great fit. And again, Patrick Alvin, from Sweden, another sort of, just outside the box a little bit. Jimmy Rutherford knew him very well, of course, from their shared time in Pittsburgh. But and Rachel Dory, a former colleague of ours here at Daily Faceoff, earlier hired on in their front office. I'm talking a lot, but that to me, I just love those kinds of moves for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and kudos to Jim Rutherford for building a staff that I think is going to knock it out of the park.
I think what Rutherford's done a good job of in Vancouver is just trying to find solutions to the management of the Vancouver Canucks that doesn't fall in line with what's the norm. And this isn't on purpose thinking like, hey, we're going to break ground and be progressive or anything. Like, I think he's just done a good job of looking for different voices. Yeah. Okay. And what I mean by that is, like, throw gender aside for a second, because Emily Castengay is overqualified for this job. she's been an assistant general manager, a player. She has experience. She has a law degree. I mean, I see a lot of Julian Brisebois in what she's accomplished so far in some ways. Right. But, toss that out a window for a second. You've got a person coming in as an AGM who's Quebecois, bilingual from that area, who played hockey at the college level. You've got somebody coming in who's Swedish, but has been in North America for a long time. And you also have the dynamic of the Sedin twins lurking in Vancouver, right? Who are also Swedish as well. And I think that you just have a very worldly outlook in this front office now. And especially when you look at Jim Rutherford's record, I mean, he's done everything, been everywhere. Yeah. So smart hires by him, I think, because the easy route for someone who's been in the game as long as Rutherford is to just hire the old guard. Just go back to what you know. And from the surface level, the hiring of Alvin looks like that.
Yeah.
Because he came from Pittsburgh as the AGM. But when you dig deeper and really look into his path and how he's ended up there, I think there's a lot of value in this, because I really do believe that different, opinions, different eyes, different mindsets, different cultural backgrounds, they all help when you're trying to craft a team, because this is such a worldly game now, Scott.
Yeah.
So I'm really impressed, and we don't know how it'll work out. We never do, but they hired a really, really bright person in the analytics department with Rachel Dory, and they haven't had any boundaries up in who they're going to hire. They went after Castengay because they saw something in her.
Yeah.
And they didn't see that she was a woman. They saw somebody qualified for this position who could help the team.
Yeah. No, and our understanding is that Jim talked to a number of other women who had similar qualifications, or certainly came from, positions of real knowledge and intellect about the game. I think that's great. It goes back. I think you're totally on board. And I think about our conversation when the Red Wings announced that they'd hired Nicholas Lidstrom to be in their player development or player personnel department, and the fact he was going to stay in Sweden for the most part. But again, it's just like, think out. It doesn't have to be the way it always was. And no. If Nick's going to be in Sweden, great. If you have these different perspectives. And I know I wrote a piece when Jim took the job as the head of hockey ops president in Vancouver. I talked to Bill Guerin, who'd been on our show, and Tom Fitzgerald, both of whom worked for Jim in Pittsburgh when they were first starting in their managerial careers. Of course, Tom GM New Jersey and Bill GM in one of the best teams in the Western Conference in Minnesota.
It's a lot of mentoring. I mean, that's three former, employees of yours that are now become GMs in the league for Jim Rutherford. It's impressive.
Yeah. And I guess what struck me was just how they described how Jim was, here's your job, you go and do that job. And then he didn't micromanage, not looking over the shoulder. And I think that's that's going to be the fascinating part in Vancouver. How do you get all these pieces to work together? A lot of different perspectives. My sense is Jim will do the exact same thing. Here, Emily, this is your job. Rachel, this is your job. Patrick, this is your job. And at the end of the day, they'll come together and Jim will make whatever final decisions. But he puts a lot of trust in his people. And I think it's great for Vancouver. And it's a lot of work to do there. I'll tell you, a lot of work to do, but it's going to be fun.
Yeah, and that's true around the league. There's teams that are struggling, but at least Vancouver's in a better spot. They've at least won some games. They're not sitting dead last. They haven't lost 13 games in a row like the Flyers have. Ouch. And that hurts. I mean, geez, Montreal, they were the team in the barrel. Okay, well, at least they've kind of turned the page. They have a general manager now. They have a new president of hockey. I'm curious with Montreal next year. I think Ken Hughes has a lot going on as well, and it all relates to Carey Price. Frankly, I think he is the guy that dictates whether that's a full rebuild or whether that's something of a reload or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. But Philadelphia, Scott, oh man, what do you do with this group? I mean, from the start of the year, this is a team that on paper was like, okay, they should be good. Yeah. And, you can say it's underperforming players. The goalies have been fine, but Drew and Atkinson have done what they should do. They've been right on par. But you look down the roster though, and it's not happening. And I think the biggest hole for me when I watch Philly is they just don't have any D that are moving the puck right now. Provorov's got 13 points. He's their leading D scorer. And that's a guy who should have more than that anyway. And beyond him, there's not much, Keith Yandel, love him. The guy just set the Ironman record, one of the best PP players in the league. That's where half his points are come from. But those forwards in Philly can't even get the puck. And we were talking 2-3 years ago about how good the D-core was from Philadelphia that Ron Hextall had drafted and developed. Well, they bring in Ristolainen. That trade looks like a disaster right now, unfortunately. And Ryan Ellis has been hurt all year. So I'm just, Scott, I can't get a read on Philly. I don't think anybody's safe there at all. I know Mike Yeo is set for the rest of the year. John Torchetti comes in as another set of eyes, but I didn't know how that three-headed monster, the coaching staff, was going to work with Yeo, Therrien, and Vigneault to start 3 years ago. It worked for a season. And after that, it's just been a mess. So I don't have any sense, Scott. Where do you think it's going in Philly?
I can tell you that, I mean, good for Keith Yandel and the Ironman streak. And Keith. And
God, one of the best guys.
Yeah, it's an incredible accomplishment. But yeah, it's, what's disappointing is that this is an organization that, I think has, rightly or wrongly, has really, it's always had an identity, or for the most part has had this identity, Flyers and all, and maybe too much of the past, back to the mid 70s, when they won their two back-to-back cups. But
there's still a lot of influence from those years.
My gosh.
And that's a long time ago now.
Yeah. And I don't know I don't know what you do. And certainly that was definitely a part of what happened with Ron Hextall. And you would have imagined, I remember when Ron took that job, talking to him about coming home in many ways where he played. And, even though he was such an important part of that Kings team. And I just thought it would translate beautifully, and it didn't. And I know Bobby Clark, I don't like this. Recently he took some shots at Ron in a podcast. I'm like, really? You're going to do that? I mean, Ron Hextall is the GM of one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference in Pittsburgh, team that is on fire. And, I know maybe Ron hasn't done, he didn't build that team, but still, it is what it is. And so I don't know how you fix it, but it is a team that has completely fallen down. They have no identity. With all due respect they have very little leadership as far as it relates to on-ice product. What is the future? Is Mike Yeo the answer? I love Mike, but it seems to me that you would need to go in a different direction coaching wise. But do you need to go in a different direction in terms of management? And Chuck Fletcher's only been there 3 or 4 years or whatever it is.
3.5 seasons at this point.
Yeah. Is that long enough? And I know I've always had this discussion with Pierre Lebrun, my pal. We would discuss these kinds of issues. What, like in Buffalo, where they change GMs every 2 or 3 years. Well, I mean, how is that fair to Tim Murray or Jason Bott? Or what is the appropriate amount of time to look at it on a management team and what they have done? And it's a disaster. Are they worse than Montreal? I don't know. It's disaster, and it's a shame.
Yeah. Well,
but how much time is the appropriate time? And if you change again, let's say, I'm a huge Danny Briere fan. I know he was in the mix in Montreal, and he's a huge fan. And at some point, he's going to be an NHL GM. But if you make that move and then he does whatever he's going to do, and I would love to see Rick Tocchet as the head coach there. What do I know? But that to me looks like a fit. But you can't. I mean, when does it stop? I guess that's my question. How long is enough, and how long is too long? Is it too long already for Chuck Fletcher? I don't know.
I'm not sure, because last season he took some swings. He did what he thought he needed to do to make that lineup better. He didn't stay patient. He wasn't complacent, and he made moves when you're getting Ristolainen and Ellis and bringing in Hayes. I mean, they miss Hayes. That contract for Hayes is still huge, and it eats up the cap. It's bigger than it should be. And it can work if you have the right players surrounding. But I think there's also even the development factor. Some of the players that are prospects, they're just haven't hit the ceiling that I think was expected. And that happens. Okay. You can't predict the future with your prospects. You really can't. But they chipped out Nolan Patrick. He's gone. Right. That was a top end prospect that
number 2 overall.
Yeah. He scored a sick goal last night. I mean, between the legs, backhand, and when Vegas was playing Carolina on Tuesday night. And I think Chuck's he's a super nice individual that I have a lot of respect for, but I think he might get one more kick at this, is what I think. I don't know where it goes. I can't predict the future with it, but this summer things have to be right, and you got to pick the right coach, and you can't go back to the well on this. Like you need to pick somebody dynamic, progressive, that's got some juice behind them. And I just think about, I know I hear Danny Briere mentioned all the time, but he doesn't have any experience. Like he's running the team in Portland, Maine from afar as a manager, like not as the general manager of that team, like as like the team itself, front office. Like, and I know he's been around people, but I think that if you're really going to step into a GM role somewhere, you have to have a GM experience. You have to have player development experience. Like you have to know the whole nuances of that. And because Danny is awesome. I love that guy. I think if you put him in as a GM right now, you're setting him up to fail. That's what I feel like with that. I'd like to see more experience for it.
Yeah. Well, and maybe it becomes one of those, what we've seen in Vancouver. And we talk about Jim Rutherford coming in as the president of hockey ops. And to me, I'm again, what do I know about hockey team structure? I love.
You know a lot, Scott. You've done this a long time. Don't sell yourself short.
Called me. Do you think I should hire a president of hockey ops? I love what in Pittsburgh. You have Brian Burke and Ron Hextall there, and then it flows down from there. I love what they're doing in Vancouver with Jim Rutherford and now Patrick Alvin, and there is that allows growth, from within those important departments. And maybe you're right, and maybe it's. Whether Danny's the right guy or not, I don't know, but maybe it's a president of hockey ops in Philly, and maybe it's, how about this? Ray Shero, whose father was Fred, one of the greatest coaches of all time, the coach of the only 2 Stanley Cups. Philadelphia. Ray Shero is president of hockey ops, and Danny Briere is here, or something like that. I love that kind of structure where you have a sort of a mentorship, but there's also defined roles. I don't know. Yeah. I'm with you. You can't make a mistake now, right? When you're as bad as things were in Vancouver and as bad as they were in Montreal, very quickly bad, and as bad as they are in Philly, you've got to make the right decision. And here's my last word on this: is my concern in Philly is that, under Ed Snyder, there was a vision there. There was one of the greatest hockey people ever. I think about what he's done in that community, and for
one of the best benefactors ever as well. Yeah,
just
a caretaker of Philadelphia.
All he wanted was to win. Now you've got this corporate monolith there. I don't know what's the direction from on high there. And we've seen it in the past in Toronto, right? Same thing. You've got this. There are very few of them, but that sort of corporate monster at the head. What's who decides what the vision is? And to me, this is one of the critical problems for Philadelphia. I don't know what you want. I don't know if there's anyone there who actually knows what they want in terms of that team.
I think the old guard does, and they're still around. Like it's just, you can't avoid that. Like no matter what, there's this air of the old guard that still has influence. Yeah. And I don't know how, like, they're absolutely valued people that should be listened to, but I don't know how you rule with an iron fist. Because Hextall came in and tried to run it his way, and he got canned for it. Yeah, straight up, dude. Like I think he tied his wagon to Hextall too long. Yeah, that was probably the biggest strike against him. But after a while, it was just. And this is a guy who was beloved within the alumni. So, this is an old flyer, right? Like this is a guy that should be successful. So I don't know, man. Like I just feel bad because Philly is such as hard as people say it is there, it's such an awesome place to play. When like the fans are invested, they love it there. And when that team's going, oh gosh, man, like I don't know. Like I played one game for him, but I was at least dressing for a month and a half or so, and finished my career in that organization, and they treat the players there really, really well. Like this is a good place to play. It's a great city. I never thought I'd have an affinity for Philadelphia, and I do now. I really like that city. Yeah. I just want to see it fixed, man. The NHL is better when Philly contends. And I'll say this about Chuck Fletcher, man. He has tried, he has done things, he's made moves. You cannot fault him for sitting on his hands. And you know what? Sometimes it just doesn't work. So I suppose that's probably it for Philadelphia, but we do have better things around the league. I mean, like it's funny because we always these negative things to talk about. It seems like, like Tuukka Rask, man. Like let's go the goalie direction here. Like, what's up with Tuukka? How much leash does Tuukka have? You know, like I know I'm the goalie guy, Scott, but I don't think he has much time to get his season going here. Like you get that feeling, because I can deep dive analyze this, but Linus Ullmark's coming on strong, man. That guy's won 9 of his last 10 games, and Tuukka hasn't looked great coming back, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know. I don't know that I'm all that surprised. Right? It's been a long. Like he was out a long time, had major surgery. So, and here's what I would say about this. The good thing for the Boston Bruins is that they have almost no pressure on them. We've talked about this, and I was looking at the standings. No one is catching any of those teams in the top 8. It's not happening. I'm sorry. I know Islanders fans. I know you've done the math. You're working out your grids and your charts. Okay, like totally.
It's not happening.
It's not happening.
It's not, man. It was done by Thanksgiving. It was done by Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving.
So if you're the Bruins and you are trying to figure out, to your point, okay, when are we going to see real Tuukka? I think this is the perfect dynamic, because it doesn't matter, right? I mean, unless you get to a point, and when is that point? I'll ask it as a question to you. When is that point? Maybe, is it by March, by the trade deadline, whenever it is? To me, you have all kinds of runway to let him get back to, his groove at his own pace. And as long as you don't lose 10 in a row, and that's not going to happen to that team, it's going to be okay. And if Ullmark plays, if he plays like he can, then okay, so he's your guy. Then I don't know that there's a downside to it. What do you think?
Yeah, I actually think Tuukka's got about a dozen games to get this thing going, and that leads him clear through almost trade deadline. And the first game he came back against Philly, I was like, yeah, it looks good, no problem. And then, man, the last 3 haven't been good at all. So he's just, he's not tracking the puck well. He's not fighting through traffic, like the things that I see of a goaltender getting back into his groove. And that's expected. Like, that's not just him being lazy. That's just what happens when you haven't played in a long time. You got to get back used to it. And I think it's just a security blanket for him, having Ullmark being that good so far, and Swayman. Okay. Like, this is a team that has 3 goalies, and all these trade talks about moving goalies, and I don't see any value in having less than 3 good goaltenders in your system if you're a playoff team. I don't. And I think it's really the defining factor here is going to be how Tuukka feels. Tuukka is going to be the one to be able to say in 10 or 12 games, if I just haven't been great. You know what I mean? Like, of course, your pride is going to say that I can get back to this. Yeah. I can be my best, but when you're not going. And it'll be interesting for me to see how that plays out. Like, is he going to play, next year or further? Who knows? Like, there's a lot in the air there, because he only wants to be a Bruin, but they were smart to protect themselves in getting Ullmark. I was surprised at that contract, but he's a good goalie, and he's been able to stay pretty healthy this year so far. Yes. So I think Boston's obviously in a good spot here, but it's really going to be if Tuukka brings it in these next 10 or 12 games, I think.
I think he's such, and this from the wild swings in Boston, in that marketplace, loving Tuukka, hating Tuukka, all that kind of stuff. And I got all kinds of time for him. Such an honest man. And I hope it works out. And, that team, again, come playoff time, and, my guess is they're going to settle into one of the wild card spots. I don't see them catching any of the top 3 in the Atlantic. So, but that, to me, I just love the idea. And whether it's Toronto, a little history there, or, Carolina, some history there, playoff wise, they're going to be a handful come playoff time. And I think, again, I love the idea that Tuukka Rask is game 1 starter, because I just think that changes the whole identity for that Bruins team. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, if it's not there, it's not there. So, so I always love to read your weekly musings, and I was going through them. First, I want to ask you, and I'll sound like Eddie Haskell, again, a reference that few will get, but
no, I get it. I get it.
Yeah, no, a little Leave It to Beaver, but
that's it.
I've really enjoyed it. How you've approached when you've written things. And I wonder what that process is like for you. I remember asking Elliot Friedman the same thing, right? Because he's a TV guy, but his 32 thoughts, column for years now has been must read for the
It
hockey
is.
community. I remember talking to him about that process of, going from a broadcast mind, and you come from a broadcast and playing mind, to actually sitting down and writing. Is it fun? Do you like it?
The writing aspect to me is a lot of ways work, where I sit down and I go, okay, it's time to work. Just sit down, do this, get it done. But what I enjoy about it most is when I can just freely speak through my hands. When I can just write what I want. When I'm doing a deep dive on analysis and trying to find clips to support theorems and really explain things, like that's, you put a lot of effort into that. But the thing is, when you finish those pieces, it's really rewarding, because a lot of times people will read those and be like, man, I never saw that. I learned something from this. That's the biggest gratification I can get from those. Yeah. But when it's me just speaking and just going through my fingers, that's a lot of fun, because I can kind of get into my own head. I'm an only child, so I just talk to myself, and that's what I do. And yeah, there is a little bit of the Elliot Friedman 32 thoughts in what I do. Like his are typically very quick hits on things, and I like to take 3 or 4 and expand on them, and really lay out there what I'm thinking. I really enjoy having my voice out there on a national scale like this. And I think it's fun to get that feedback on what people are thinking and reading with what I've said, because, Scott, there is some influence in what you write a lot of times. It gets people thinking. And I'll tell you what, man, like, your voice as a player is actually pretty muted a lot. You only get little sound bites here and there. And if a journalist or reporter or media member comes up to you and you only get 2 minutes to kind of talk, it just doesn't get out there. I can do whatever I want right now. I can say what I want, for better or worse, it's out there.
I love that.
And that's, man, my teammates all the time, when I was playing, like, they knew I had pretty strong opinions, but you gotta stay within the context of the game itself, So it's been a transition that way. But for somebody who only took 1 or 2 journalism courses, there are little things I remember from it that I still use. But I'll tell you what, man, you've been a big help. Frank Saravalli has been, and Dan Marazza with Daily Faceoff have helped me an awful lot in just cleaning up my writing and making it accessible.
Yeah.
Short sentences, periods, like paragraphs, like make it pop, because it used to be one long run-on sentence, just like I'm talking right now.
That's how my questions are, as just one giant long run-on sentence. But your copy is very clean. I will say that. I always took that as a great, sort of certain amount of pride if someone said, "Oh, no, your copy is really clean." So yours is
appreciated.
But so one of the things that you wrote about this week, and I really, it's interesting, because when we think of the Hart Trophy, and we've talked a little bit about it in the past, sort of, is it Ovies, and with the Oiler woes, even though they're coming off a big win in Vancouver, overtime win for the Oilers there. Hard to imagine McDavid and Draisaitl really being a factor at this point. Could change. But I love that you mentioned Jonathan Huberdeau, and I just think that Florida team, man, and they've gone through a stretch, they have the potential to light it up at any moment. They're really, and as Barkov's the guy, he's sort of the engine, I suppose. But in some ways, Huberdeau's, he's like the high test gas, I think. And I wonder, if it's his presence on that team, and they're going to finish, to my mind, top 5 team probably in the NHL. I wonder if it'll be enough for voters to say, is he the guy, or will it be sort of split votes like we've seen with Draisaitl and McDavid? But I'm glad you mentioned Huberdeau, because I think in some ways he's been a bit under the radar, and he is dynamite.
Especially, I thought so, because of how hot he's been lately. Yeah. He's 2 points a game now for the last dozen or so is what he's averaging. And that's not sustainable usually, but when you're coming on that strong and you still have half of a season left, that's when you start to wonder, is this the guy that could actually grab hold of this race for the Hart Trophy, as MVP of the league? I think it's realistic. And like you said, Barkov has always been viewed as the guy in Florida, but I played with them there, and Huberdeau is damn good player.
Yep.
And he was good when I was there. And this was 14, 15, that type of time frame, 15, 16. But man, the last couple of years, his game has just taken off. Like it was his 6th, 7th year in the NHL. Yeah. that it just hit another level. And that's pretty rare. Usually by the third or fourth year, you are what you are. He's found ways to keep going, and he's just so dynamic. If you want to pattern your game after somebody, he can do it all. He can skate, he can shoot, he's heads up, he can make plays, he's nimble. Like, it's everything. It's a total package.
Yeah.
And, I think if you look towards like Colorado, for instance, right? Nazem Kadri's fifth in scoring. And you got Cale Makar, he can score goals whenever he wants on the back end. And then you have Nathan McKinnon. And like, there's so much star power in Colorado that how can you pick an MVP from that group versus Florida, where, it's Barkov or Huberdeau. And right now, Huberdeau's been their best player.
Yeah.
It's driven by Barkov, but Huberdeau's finishing. And I mean, he's the point off the top of the standings right now in the points race. Like, and Florida's good. Like, they're going to keep going. Like, Edmonton's no lock for playoffs. You can't give a guy that didn't make playoffs an MVP award. So
that's not happening.
No, it's not. So I mean, I just think it's fascinating how we go throughout the year, and it always varies, right? We've gone from McDavid as a shoe-in to Ovi's leading it to now Huberdeau. Maybe he's in the mix. Like, I think it's going to be really interesting by the end of the year, Scott. Yeah. I love this race.
So let me ask you this. I was been reading about a guy named Sidney Crosby. Perhaps you've heard of him, but
I think so.
And it's interesting because, and I think it's fair to do this. We talk about Ovi, who's still having a great year, still definitely heart-worthy in terms of discussion. Caps have sprung a bit of a leak, right? Fallen out of the top three. They're in that wild card. Washington couldn't end up as the second wild card team. It just, they're in a bit of they're adrift right now. But I tell you, Crosby, and I was doing this here since November 26th and through last night when he had 3 points as they came back and crushed Arizona. He has 32 points in 23 games. And, and this is always what Crosby does. So he plays both ends. He's a machine in many ways. And I wonder, he's not going to challenge to win the scoring title. I mean, I should look. I don't think he's in the top 10, but anyway, he's not. So he's not going to win a scoring title, which is fine with me when it comes to the heart. But I wonder if his play over the second half, if he keeps this up, he may end up in the top 10, but such a dynamic, presence, obviously. And I just wonder if he sort of creeps into that discussion, if the Penguins continue to play this way. They are right now, of course, challenging the Rangers and Carolina for top spot in the Metro and one of the top teams in the NHL. I don't know. What do you make it?
Well, I mean, there's no denying what Crosby's done this season, especially since coming back. He's missed so much time. He's played 10, he's going to end up playing 10 less games, 12 less games than everybody else in the league. And that's going to hurt him. Yep. But I mean, like, he's still slinging pucks between his legs and dominating games. Like, it's amazing that we almost forget how good he is because he's done it for so long. And I think for looking at Crosby for an MVP, it's an internal MVP. Everybody knows it. I don't think he's going to get the accolades for it, but he's somebody that I think at times at this stage of his career, almost we take it for granted. You forget that this guy's still an absolute premier player in the league. Yeah. Now Pittsburgh's did well without him, but now they've really kicked it into gear once they have him again. And I just always have to wonder how long can he play? But the one thing that I will say, like, he doesn't kill penalties though.
No.
And that's one thing that to me is always kind of stuck in my craw a bit, because I thought, he should probably be somebody who kills penalties. He plays hard. He takes smart routes. He does all that. And he doesn't. So I don't know. I wonder that McDavid's always, it struck me as well, right? This is a guy that doesn't kill penalties either. Draisaitl kills penalties.
Yeah.
Others in the league do. So I don't know. I think that it doesn't get enough love in that respect. And I'm trying to find any way I can to bring Sidney Crosby off his pedestal, which he doesn't deserve at all. The guy's, legitimately one of the top 5 players to ever play the game, if you ask me. Yes, so totally. I love it. I'm rooting for him I'm rooting for Pittsburgh, honestly, this year. I think they've been through a lot, and I'd like to see them have another good run this time.
I'm all for, and I didn't cover the last one because I was out west. So that would be 2018, the Caps here. But I've covered all the Caps Penguins playoff clashes. One more. We're probably, what are we looking at? Maybe one more. I think that would be outstanding. I want that, and then I want Frank to let me cover it. That's what I want. I'll do that dive.
Well, there's a little dive bar there. I think you like.
Yeah, exactly.
I believe so.
I see.
Yeah, but I mean, like, think about other people right now around the league that are just killing it. Like Chris Kreider, really? Yeah. Like 30 goals leading the league. Like, I mean, he doesn't do anything crazy. He goes to the front of the net and he buries it. And he's got a nice skill set though. Again, like this is a player who really fits in today's game. He skates like the wind, and that's half of why he's successful. He gets to the front of the net in a big hurry.
Yeah.
But man, he's got some magic teammates with him. And this isn't taking anything away from Kreider, because goal scorers have to have people to get them the puck.
Yeah.
But man, when you got Adam Fox filtering that thing, and Zibanejad and Panarin, like some of the guys with the biggest field of vision in hockey.
Yeah.
Especially on the power play, boy, Kreider just doesn't miss, man. He's always in the right spot. Those little low to high plays, quick hands and tight. Like I kind of think about Jonathan Chichu's 56 goal season in 05-06, where he led the league, and then it just kind of went down from there.
Yeah.
But I don't see that with Kreider. He may score 50 this year.
Yeah.
Easy. He's at 30 already. I think he's probably realistically more like a 35-40 is what you could expect. But man, like pretty magical year, Scott. And I think like this Rangers team, they may not win this year, but they're going to give somebody some nightmares in playoffs, I think.
Yeah, it's fun to watch them play. And it was interesting because before we knew that the NHL wasn't going to the Olympics, I think there would have been, if I went back, I'd have to look, and, would you have had Chris Kreider as a shoe-in on your U.S. Olympic team? I'm not sure you would have. And of course, right now, in hindsight, if you were building a U.S. Olympic team right now, of course he's there.
Yeah, no question.
Goes without saying.
Was he even on the long list? We don't know. Troy Terry wasn't on the long list.
Yeah, exactly. He would have been on the long list, but he was just one of the, I think, to your point, he's really just taking advantage. And what a great moment for him. Guys worked hard at it, and he's not a young man anymore. He's really part of that leadership group, and really an important, I think, for those young players. And I know Capo Caco's out with an injury for a period of time, but Alexis Lafreniere, and it's a young team. And now Chris Kreider he's part of that leadership course. Yep. So and I'm with you. I love to watch that, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it plays out, and what does the matchup look like? Whoever they play in the playoffs. It's going to be a lot to ask that team against, whoever they play is going to be more experienced and have a lot more playoff teeth. I'm not sure it'll matter, but it's going to be fun to watch. So
imagine if they pull off this rumored deal for JT Miller. We just keep hearing about endlessly. And I don't even know if Miller gets moved. Honestly, that's a big asset for Vancouver and Jim Rutherford. But man, that cap hit, he might be a pretty good fit there. I thought he'd be a good fit in Boston as well, but I don't know, man. Trade deadline I wonder what it'll be this year, Scott, because I always think that it's the depth players that win you Stanley Cups when it's deadline moves.
Yeah.
It's very rarely the big shiny object at the deadline, the game-changing player.
Yep.
Just doesn't work very often. It's usually your Barclay Goodrow's and Blake Coleman's going to Tampa Bay and providing that depth.
Zach Bogosian
take your pick, That's where Colorado's a team I'd like to see a little bit more of that, a little more grittiness there, know? Yeah.
I know we're still 2 months away, but you've been in the locker room. Do players, like, it's a huge deal for us in the media, right? Like, we talk about it all the time, right? I mean, and I think it's fun. I'm with you. I think sometimes we over analyze all these kinds of things, and and you're right. The big names sometimes, I think of Taylor Hall. Okay, it was a good fit, but not a great fit in Boston. And anyway,
Yeah.
you're right. It is sometimes the complementary player that gets added that ultimately makes them what's the difference. But as players, do players talk about it too? Like, are you sitting in the room? Are they thinking, oh, I think it looks like Vancouver may dump, or when is San Jose going to sell off, or the Rangers, are they in it to win it? Will they be buying? Like, does it happen that way?
Oh yeah, there's whispers all the time. I mean, guys aren't immune to seeing things in media and the talks. And it is funny from this side because now I have to be kind of judicious with my words and thinking that if I even posit a move or a trade, it can suddenly turn into a rumor real quickly. I mean, like I said this week that I thought Anton Forsberg would be a great fit for the Oilers at a really cheap cap hit because they can't do any worse, honestly. And I mean this, I mean this with all due respect to Mikko Koskinen. Like, that guy has to get out of Edmonton. If he's going to keep his career going, he's got to get out of there. Yeah. So, like, if they're going to have to make a move, there's a guy I think fits really well. Well, I have no inside knowledge of if that's even been explored, right? But this can turn into a rumor really quickly. Yeah. And so I'm kind of always wary of it. But yeah, man, hockey's, I'm not sure players, players are more naive than people think. Like they just see the same things and they're thinking, well, I heard this. And it's not usually by word of mouth because management never tells us anything like that ever. So, we're living by a wing and a prayer the same way, just thinking like, oh, I'm a dead man walking. I'm going to get traded. I know it. Like, there are those moments where players, you can just sense it. Like, they just know it. And I've heard teammates say it, I'm probably going to get traded anyway. Like, it's real. And, for those guys, it's actually kind of nice. Like, you can be a little bit ready for it if you feel it's coming. It's when you get blindsided by something that's a big shock to your system where you don't expect it at all.
Yeah. It's I've done enough stories on it, and where you're excited as part of the media and as a fan, the whole deadline thing and the trades that happen. And it is exciting because I think it, in some ways teams, they send a message, right? They send a message, a GM, whatever team it is, and you make an addition. What you're saying is, I believe in you guys, and we're going to commit these assets, and we're going to bring in this player, and we think he'll help take us another step. And that's, I would think that would be a powerful thing in the locker room, but it also often means that somebody leaves. And if I told this story, who cares? I'm going to tell it again. But I remember talking to Marty Turco in Dallas after they acquired Brad Richards from Tampa. And, again, it was, the excitement. Here's my story. And Marty Turco was like, sit down. He's like, you know what? My best friend and my little brother, Mike Smith, Edmonton Oiler netminder, went in that deal. And he said, you know what? And I think, I can't remember who else went in that deal. Might have been UC Jokinen. Doesn't matter. There were 2 or 3 players that went in that deal. And he said, there's a hole in this locker room where those guys used to be. And as much as we love Brad Richards and we're excited to have that player, let's not forget that there were relationships here. And I'm a bit sad today. And I was like, man, I'm so glad I had this conversation, because it's easy just to think of in terms of chess pieces. So.
Yeah. It's kind of like in Shawshank Redemption, where I just miss my friend. I think it's Morgan Freeman's character.
Yes.
Or it's either Andy or Morgan Freeman's character.
Yeah,
I think it's Morgan Freeman's character
Freeman.
because he's kind of the narrator of the whole thing.
Yeah.
He says, I just miss my friend. And that's, you're still friends with these players that get traded and moved on, but man, like you spend some special time with them, and thankfully today it's easier than ever to stay in touch. But, I was talking with a friend of mine, Andrew Campbell, played some games with the Leafs, with Arizona, was a captain in the American League for a long time. And now he's coaching in the OHL. And we just kind of reminisce sometimes like that. And it's fun to talk about the players that are still going and looking at like the Canadian Olympic team and going, geez, like wish we were still playing, like it's kind of like an American Hockey League all-star team in some ways. And you still have that bond, but you just miss going to the rink every day, man. Like you're so close to these individuals for 7 months. And then you flip a switch, you go home and you may never see them again.
Yeah.
It's just a weird lifestyle, man.
All right. We're getting towards the end. Before we get there, I know you and I were talking yesterday, you were about to make dinner at home, but I know that sometimes if you don't have the energy or if you're busy, that DoorDash is your go-to. And as always, during this podcast, we like to acknowledge that DoorDash is the proud sponsor of the Nation Network of podcasts, restaurants, and more delivered right to your door. Curious, what did you make? What was on the menu at the McKenna House last night that I know you were chefing it up?
I was. And you know what? 2 days ago, DoorDash came to the rescue because I screwed up. I didn't realize that the Manila clams that I bought from the Pan Asia Superstore down the road needed a solid hour of prep before you can cook these things. You got to clean them, rinse them, scrub them.
Wow.
And it's easy. Like you put them in water for 20, drain them, put them in another water for 20, drain them, and then you scrub them, whatever. But I didn't have time. So I went, I'm sorry, everybody. I screwed this one up. We're door dashing it. So we did that. We took care of dinner, but yeah, I made some clams last night with some ramen noodles, made a broth for it. I'd never done that before, made clams, and it was fun. The broth was a little weird, but I had a good time. And you know what, Scott? It looked pretty. That's all that matters. Put some fresh herbs on things. You can fool anybody.
Good stuff. All right. We'll get towards the end. I was thinking of you this morning as soon as I was watching that highlight of Aaron Dell really sort of suckering Drake Batherson from the Senators, send him into the boards. I saw Bruce Garriock, who's covered the Sens for 100 years, quoting sources saying that he'll be out long-term. It looks like a high ankle sprain. And just, I feel bad for the kid. He's such a good player. And the Sens just, looking like they might get a little bit of a, traction and whatever it is, but I didn't like it. And I thought it was a rather unfortunate incident involving the Buffalo Sabres netminder Aaron Dell.
It's a bad play. It's not good. I mean, you have to look at this through the goaltender's eyes that, you're not allowed to be hit.
Yeah. But
by the rules, you still can hit as a goalie, which is crazy because there's so few instances in a game where you could actually lay a hit as a goalie. Yeah. It's at that stage that there doesn't really even need to be a rule because there's not a reason for us to hit, but you do see it happen.
Yeah.
And I actually think, Scott, that it might be a good idea for the NHL to just include that in the rules. Goalies they're not fair game. They can't be hit and they cannot make a hit.
Yeah.
Because it would help these types of situations because Aaron Dell clearly thinks I can hit or I can at least get in the way. But Batherson doesn't even have the puck, man. Batherson's just trying to cut the net. And I heard Dell say, I'm just trying to buy my decent time. Well, no, man, you chicken winged a dude in a seriously vulnerable position, and now he's out long term.
Yeah,
and you stuck him in the boards in a really bad way, and you're frustrated. You've already allowed 4 or 5 goals in a game. Your season's going terrible. And he's done this before. He buried Mark Stone last year in a kind of a similar way. He laid a hit in Nashville, which. The hit in Nashville recently would have been a good hit if he'd have stayed on his skates. He left his skates. You can't even do that. That's an illegal hit. Part of me's thinking dude, did you ever take checking classes? But I don't like it at all, man. It's one thing for a goalie after you go out to play the puck to stand there like a pylon, or at least take a route back to your net and buy your D some time.
Yeah.
You have a right to you have a right to the ice. You have a right to your space, but you don't have a right to stick your shoulder, your elbow out, or purposefully make contact with somebody.
Yeah.
If there's incidental contact, whatever, it can happen. And goalies have to protect themselves if they see it coming. But that was just a bad play, man. It was, I don't like name calling things, but that was just stupid, man. You really ran a real strong risk of hurting somebody. And you say afterwards, I don't want to hurt anybody. Well, when you do that routinely, you're going to hurt somebody. And you did. In a 4 or 5-0 game against 2 teams that are in the cellar.
Yeah.
Sorry, man. Time, place, all that stuff. He's going to get suspended, or at least he should be.
Yeah. Yeah. He's got a hearing. So yeah. And I'm with you. And I think there is listen, I know some people immediately respond, well, if they're going to do that, then it should be open. If the goalie's going to play the puck, then hit him. To me, come on, that's ridiculous. But to your point, you enjoy a certain protectiveness under the rules, as it should be. When you do that, then you should pay a heavy price because you're taking advantage of that. So
I agree. Yeah. I mean, you're seeing a gray area basically in the rules and thinking I can kind of I can massage this a little bit. And you know what we do? I mean, the goalies will occasionally stick a hip out a little bit or interfere a little bit or a little rub on the boards. And And to me, it's almost kind of like women's hockey. They're not allowed to body check.
Yeah.
But damn sure they rub on each other. You know what I mean? Like that is not women's hockey is a physical game.
Yeah.
You know, there's not the open ice, clean body checking hits, but that's kind of the same space that a goalie lives in. Like you are kind of allowed to lean and rub a little, but I think that it wouldn't be a bad idea to have the rule in place. Goalies, you can't hit. If you're protected, you can't go the other way with that. And I could easily live with that. I'd have no problem with it.
Yeah. All right. Got anything else? Last word. I give you the floor before we wrap this up today.
Well, I just think, man, we're headed to Vegas. And after Vegas and after the All-Star break, testing rules change for the NHL. Players, 2/3 of the leagues had COVID, according to our own daily face-off tally, has been in protocol this year. It's going to be smooth sailing here, Scott.
Oh,
like,
man.
It should be. Like,
this is like talking about a shutout. Oh my
God.
Yeah,
I know. Like this is
hope you're right.
Fun. And I hope I'm not being too Pollyanna and things don't go bananas with like a new alpha lettered variant that we don't even know about or something. But I'm excited for that. I'm really excited to see you in Vegas. I'm excited to see people that I met while I was in Vegas working there too. It's going to be a fun reunion on a personal level like that. And I know for us, especially at Daily Face Off, we've got some good stuff coming to look forward to, don't we?
Yeah, it is. All right, my friend. Well, next time I see you, it'll be in person. I look forward to it. And as always, terrific to catch up and can't wait for next week, and be safe.
Same to you. Travel safe. Get that KN95 on, and I'll see you in Vegas.
I'll see you there.